G'day everyone and welcome back to the Big Bros podcast. Welcome if it's your first time joining us on the show. My name is Jeremy and I'm joined by my lovely friend and co-host Ilan. How are you, mate?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited for this episode. We're talking all about confidence versus arrogance, as you guys can see, to kick off episode 73. And I feel like this was an episode that I remember talking to you about a long time ago when we first even wanted to create this podcast, because I feel like confidence is one of those concepts that we all want to get better in and we all glorify to a certain extent. How to become more confident, how to be seen as more confident amongst other people. It's ultimately a key social skill that can be hard to be mastered, but with a lot of time thinking about it and drawing upon perspectives and experiences within life getting older, I feel like I've started to develop a bit more of a stronger, more direct approach into how I view confidence. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's two types of people usually. There's people who aren't really confident and then they start becoming confident, and they don't really necessarily become arrogant or cocky, but they just become way more sure within themselves. And you can tell that they don't think that they're better than anyone else. And then there's the other person who does become confident. They've got a few achievements coming their way, but you can tell there's a bit of arrogance, maybe arrogance in the way they speak, cockiness in the way they treat other people. And, you know, that's a trait that we don't really like or respect in other people. I think we sometimes as a society do conflate confidence with arrogance, and we can get into it a little bit later, that conflation. But generally speaking, I think as you get through your 20s and you accomplish more things, accomplishments tend to be synonymous with building confidence. So I think it's a really cool topic, and especially for young people, especially, you know, that adolescent male who wants to learn how to become more confident with their friends, with the female sex, with general life. I think it's really important to know how to master the skill of confidence without it becoming corrupted by arrogance.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest thing that I think you get backlash for on the internet, when people start to see you maybe looking like you're a bit more of a confident person. They start to view you as maybe someone that's becoming arrogant or has tickets on themselves. So it's a fine line. And in Australia as well, we like to cut people down. It's that tall poppy syndrome. So it really is that fine line. And I think it's, yeah, whilst it is a fine line, there are some key factors that will separate you from being viewed as someone that is confident versus someone that is arrogant. And to kick it off, I think the first one that separates confidence versus arrogance is how you interact with other people. Are you pedestalizing yourself? Are you patronizing other people? Are you constantly talking about how good you are and how good those accolades are that you've achieved, the type of watch you own, the type of car you drive, how much money you're making? Are these things at the forefront of your conversation with other people? Or are you actually more inclined to be a good listener and hear about what other people have to say and tap into that side of things a bit more? And I think that can be a really nice way to think about this topic as well.
I think that's a very excellent point, because there's a common theme in what you described there, and it's the paradox of insecurity. While someone who might be arrogant might give themselves a confidence look by talking about all their achievements and all their accolades, at the end of the day, the theme that's recurrent in all of that is the need for external validation. And the person who keeps talking about their fancy watch, fancy car, their fancy salary, doesn't understand that why they're doing it is to garner some sort of praise from others. So that begets the question, why are they doing that? Are they not deriving that sense of security from within themselves? Because someone who's confident would do that. And someone who's confident doesn't really rely on other people, right? They can rely amongst themselves. They can rely upon their own sense of achievements. And they don't, and you know what? A confident person, and this is something I've observed, they don't necessarily equate their self-worth with their accomplishments. Whereas someone who's arrogant might do that. Therefore, they become way more vulnerable and way more, fragile when something doesn't go their way. What would you say to that?
It's a funny one, because I feel like as humans, and I feel like, as a man, as a male in particular, a lot of fulfillment for us comes from our sense of accomplishments, what we can achieve. So it's about recognizing, yeah, I'm achieving things, and achieving things is great, and it does give me that sense of fulfillment, but is that really the crux of what makes me a confident male? And if that is, then it's just masquerading insecurities that you do have. That's how I view it, at least.
No, well, that's fine, but I'm also speaking from the perspective that someone who's confident within themselves isn't relying on others for that validation. They can look at their own accomplishments, and, you know, it's the whole thing of like, confidence, as Chris Williamson says, isn't created by shouting affirmations. It's by having an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. And that's by looking at your past evidence. And your past evidence is looking at all the actions and behaviors you've completed. So it's like that, it's that countervailing evidence you have, right? It's like, I think, and that's what I think makes someone who's confident quite, you know, sure in themselves, is because if it's the whole idea of past performance is a reliable indicator of future performance, is because they've got a whole backlog of evidence to back it up. Whereas someone who's arrogant, yeah, they might still derive confidence from their own achievements, but they still equate it with their self-worth. A person who's confident understands that, yeah, like I've achieved all this stuff and yeah, it's great, but like that doesn't define me as a person.
Yeah, and I think that arrogant person, especially through conversation, they might take the approach of thinking the way in which they've accomplished their achievements is the only way to skin the cat as well, and that must be the route to success and the route to confidence, because that's what worked for them. They're more closed-minded, they're more fixed-minded approach versus someone that's confident that will take a more open-minded approach to conversation. Plenty of successful people out there, you know, your Bill Gateses of the world, your still Steve Jobses, your Elon Musks, plenty of really successful people, but the ones that can separate themselves from being confident to arrogant, I feel like separate themselves in terms of how they present themselves to these other people. Are they more closed-minded? Do they think that their way is the only way? Or are they open to learning? Are they open to learning from other people? Are they open to listening to other people? That is a confident person. A confident person has that assurance in themselves that what they're doing is working for them, but they're willing to learn from the ones around them that have also gone through the same things, but they can draw upon different lessons that they've learned that maybe them themselves didn't go through themselves.
You've touched on an excellent point there, and there's that book by, I forgot what her name was, Growth versus Fixed Mindset. What was the book by? Forgot her name, but in any case, someone who's confident, and one of the most attractive qualities about that person is they can still be confident, but they'll ask questions. They'll acknowledge that they're not always the smartest person in the room. And for that, I think it's a fantastic trait to have, because you're not so much concerned with how you're perceived by others. You're happy to relegate yourself as the dumbest person in the room, but you're more concerned with acquiring knowledge by saying, yeah, look, I've got a bit of humility in this situation. I don't know everything, but by me asking you a question, I will have the chance to learn more, to better myself. And someone who's arrogant won't tap into that humility because they think they're the best. They don't think that anyone else can outdo themselves or outdo them. I think someone with confidence understands that, yeah, they're really good in one aspect, and we can talk about situational confidence as well, because you talked about it earlier. But someone who's confident understands their own limitations. And I think there's the key difference, is that confidence is rooted within you, whereas arrogance is rooted within others.
Yeah, and that point you mentioned just there about being in the room and being the smartest person in the room, that is often a quote that we hear all too often when it comes to business, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to innovation, is that you need to be the smartest person in the room. That's how you stand out from the rest. That's how you get success, acquire confidence, acquire more money, acquire more status. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I maybe heard a quote from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, the legend. It might be him, it might not be. So apologies if it's not him. But I think I remember him saying something along the lines of, it's about just being in the room, not being the smartest person in the room, but getting yourself in that room is the mindset you should have. Because like you said before, that's the learning approach to the situation. Rather than trying to be the dominating figure in that room, the dominating figure amongst conversation, amongst people, you're the one in that room that has that self-assurance about themselves, but is willing to learn and to grow from the experiences and perspectives of other people. And this can be applied for even things like dating. You know, if you go on a date, if you're a female listening and, you know, you're going on a first date or a date with a guy, and that guy is constantly just talking about himself, constantly talking about his accolades, the money that he makes, the status that he has amongst his organization, you know, the car, the watch, all of these fancy things. If that is 70% of what he's talking about, if not more, and he's just dominating the conversation constantly and you're not getting an ear in, that is an arrogant man speaking. That is not a confident man speaking.
Would you agree that confident people embrace the idea of less is more?
Absolutely. That's a whole line along the notion of confident people are more so willing to listen, are good active listeners. They take in from what other people say, and they will talk when necessary, and they will not be afraid to pose opposing views as well, or ask questions to you, or, you know, tap into vulnerability as well. So that's where you will see the difference in terms of your relationships with people, whether it is that date or whether it's amongst the friendships in your group. That person that is constantly dominating, that wants to be the head honcho, that doesn't really give you an ear in, doesn't really give you that platform to voice your opinion, or is quick to shut you down. That's arrogance. That is not a confident person in your group.
So is arrogance not sexy then?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the people that are attracted to arrogance, I feel like that's only a recipe to then breed toxicity later down the line, because arrogance doesn't have that quality of compassion and understanding for another person. You're putting yourself on a pedestal amongst other people. You're patronizing someone else. That's an arrogant and ignorant person. And that's only a recipe for toxicity and failure.
Well, I think the whole idea of women being attracted to assholes, it's not necessarily that it's wrong, but I think that society conflates confidence with arrogance all too much. So the person that they're attracted to has a teaspoon of confidence and a teaspoon of arrogance, or maybe 2 big fat tablespoons. But what people don't see is that, yeah, that person who's arrogant also might have a little bit of confidence about them, a little bit of swagger. And people kind of...
But that's different. Swagger is different to arrogance.
Sure, but I'll tie that in more with confidence. But they'll still be a little bit arrogant, and people will assume that, okay, in order for me to attract girls, I have to be an asshole. I have to treat them mean, keep them keen. And look, that's going to work. You're going to attract some, you know, low quality people. You know, that goes for males
that's
and
exactly
females.
Right.
But
it's low quality.
Because you're going to be attracting people who want the chaos, who want, you know, the drama, who don't want stability. And, you know, people tend to date the parts of themselves, or the parts of themselves that need to be healed. So they'll look for that in other people. So if someone who's quite damaged is wanting to date, is attracted to someone who's quite arrogant, perhaps it's a part of themselves that hasn't been resolved. And, you know, that's always replayed in, you know, who people choose to date. But nonetheless, I think it's a very important point that most people are attracted to confidence and not attracted to arrogance. And the reason people aren't attracted to arrogance is authenticity. Because someone who's arrogant is never going to be authentic within themselves. Because the picture that they portray to the rest of the world is a very fragile one. That's why arrogant people will never, ever, ever tap into vulnerability. Because by them tapping into vulnerability, they're acknowledging they've got a weakness. And someone who's confident, they're so sure of themselves that they understand that by them tapping into vulnerability, they're not a weak person. They're just addressing life as it is. You know, it is what's the saying? It's like what you see is what you get with that confident person. And if they're happy to tap into that vulnerability, first of all, it makes them attractive, right? Because it takes strength to be vulnerable. We've spoken about it so many times on this podcast that being vulnerable is something that should be commended, right? I think it's first of all, vulnerability is how you create some meaningful connections with other people, is when you tell them, hey, this is what I'm really worried about. This is what I'm really scared about. But at the same time, it takes someone who's confident to do that. But I want to ask you about situational confidence. Can you tell me about that? And first of all, if you're confident in one aspect and you're not confident in another area. So for example, let's say I'm really confident in playing the guitar. I'm not confident in doing my tax returns. Again, really crappy examples. Does that mean I'm not a confident person as a whole?
Well, this is what ties into situational confidence. This is confidence versus situational confidence, people. So strap yourselves right in, because this is one that I've grappled with a bit myself, you know. And let's take the example of an AFL footballer, looks extremely confident on the field, kicks those goals, gets 25 touches, etc. You know, a Charlie Curnow type of person. You look at a person like that and you think, far out, they are confident. They excel in what they do. they're him, they're that person, you know? But I think it's important to understand that that is merely situational confidence. Just because that person is so good in one area of their life, so good in one of their hobbies or skills, does not mean they're a confident person. Once you put them into a different situation, like on a tennis court or in a social setting filled with 50 strangers that they've never spoken to, or up on a stage and they have to public speak, that's where their true character will shine through. You're putting that person in a situation where they are not feeling, for lack of better words, confident, or they're not feeling like they're in a situation that they're rather used to, that's familiar to them. So situational confidence is different to normal confidence. True confidence, I believe, is just the notion that everything's going to be okay. Whatever it is in terms of the situation you're in, whatever situation is presenting itself to you, whichever environment you are in at that moment in time, you just have the mindset that everything will be okay. You will work it out along the way. That's true confidence. I think it just comes down to that rather than the situational confidence, which is, you know, being excellent in one skill, going up to a girl in the bar and introducing yourself. That's not confidence. That's just the ability to feel more familiar in a certain environment and therefore more willing to go about acting in a certain way.
Well, I think situational confidence is still confidence, truthfully speaking. I mean...
But it's situational. It's not deep-seated core confidence.
Well, not necessarily, because confidence, as I said before, is developed through accomplishments naturally. It's by drawing on reps. It's by, you know, the reason Charlie Kerner is such a good goal kicker and he's so confident and he has the double cobra every time he kicks a goal late in that third quarter is because the amount of set shots he probably takes, it's, you know, he's done probably a lot more than 10,000 hours of set shots in that, you know, in the 50-meter arc. So yeah, it's situational confidence, but it's confidence in one domain. And I don't think you'll ever find someone who's confident in every domain of life. Maybe Christian Petrarca, because he's a great chef as well. And he's, you know, just a great human being from all the sounds of it. But it's very rare that you're going to find someone who's just confident in every domain of life. Everyone's human. You're not going to be great at everything. You're going to have weaknesses. But at the same time, then for you believe that what makes someone holistically confident, like all around, is the belief that they're going to be fine no matter what the circumstances are, right?
Well, that's why I think those examples you bring there is not what true confidence is. I think that's just the ability to feel good or be good at a skill, you know, because we mentioned Christian Petrarca there, you know, great at football, great in the kitchen, must be a confident guy in a few domains. That's not confidence. That's just the ability to be good at certain things.
So how do you develop holistic confidence? How do you develop that ability to be like, in your definition, that things will be okay? No matter what life throws at me, I will do my best to overcome these challenges. How do you develop that confidence?
Being brave and being courageous and knowing that whatever it is that happens in this circumstance, I will find a way to perform my best, to be my best. And even if that results in me being a public failure and a public humiliation, I know that that is the worst case scenario. Like, I am not going to die. I am not going to, you know, crumble to the ground. I know that I will be okay. I think it's more of a mindset than it is the ability to portray a skill, to portray an action. I think that's deep-seated core confidence to me. It's bravery in a situation that is either familiar or not familiar to you, but you just know that whatever happens, you will be okay.
But I'd still argue, and this is where I might have a slight disagreement with you, which is that in order to build holistic confidence, you just need to improve situational confidence in various domains. So if I'm
That's a great point.
So the idea here being is that, like, sure, if I'm a great goal kicker for the Carlton Football Club, I don't just express my confidence and develop my skills in that domain. I do it in other parts of my life. So for example, I do a personal audit of all the strengths and weaknesses in my life and work on my personal weaknesses. So for example, if I'm someone who's not a good public speaker and I want to become confident in that because, for example, I want to give keynote speeches, then I do enough reps of those so I become confident in that domain. And then you find another domain where you're a bit, you know, not as strong in, and you work on that and you work on that. And naturally, you're going to become more confident as a general holistic person. Because the thing is, I don't necessarily believe that you can just, and I'm not saying you're proposing this, I think you're proposing something a little bit different, but I don't believe in this notion that you can just become confident overnight. I think you can fake it till you make it, but even with faking it till you make it, you still need to put in some sort of effort, some sort of repetition, and some sort of, sacrifice in place, whether it be mental sacrifice, psychological sacrifice, or physical sacrifice, to get you to a point where you are competent with something. And competence begets confidence, right? Competence begets confidence, and I can't underestimate that enough, because at the end of the day, if you can draw on that evidence base that tells you that you can accomplish things in one domain, then you could probably accomplish it in other domains. And that gives you confidence that even if you're weak in one area, that doesn't mean that you're never going to be good at it.
Confidence is transferable. And I think that's exactly what you mean when talking about getting better in a skill in a different domain, putting in the reps in a different domain so that you get better. Because you're right, if you just step up onto a stage and think that you're going to be excellent at public speaking from the get-go, that's not being realistic about yourself. You can be confident in the way in which you go about it, in terms of knowing that, yeah, look, I might be pretty shit at this, but I know that I'm going to be okay. I'm going to come out of it, and I'm going to give it my best shot in whichever way that is. Doesn't mean you're going to be good at it, but you might have a bit of a confidence, or rather not confident, but you might have a mentality that you'll be okay. But confidence is transferable. And by that, I mean, you can put in the reps in one domain, like you said. So that goal kicking, for example, get really good at that. And then you can maybe try that in a different domain. Say you wanted to get better in a different sport, right? You're great at one sport. So maybe transfer those skills into a different sport, and you might not be great from the get-go, but it's the mentality that you're great in one area in a different environment. So let's take that confidence that I'm good at this one thing in a different environment and bring it to a new environment and work on the reps in that environment to ultimately try get better there to the extent that you are in another environment. So that's that transfer of practice of confidence. So if we want to use the example of social skills, you want to get confident at approaching girls. Let's say that's something you want to get better in, feel more confident in. You might feel really confident in doing so in the normal bars that you go out to on the weekends. That might come naturally to you. You know what maybe the conversation starters might be. You know the type of crowd that it typically brings in, but you haven't really try to be that type of person in a different environment, right? So there might be a completely different bar in a different suburb that brings in people that look completely different, or the surrounding looks completely different. And here you need to start trying to maybe adapt your approach or change your approach wholeheartedly. And that's where that transfer of practice comes in. The mentality that that you're pretty confident in one area, in one environment, that's enough to maybe give me a little bit of that edge to try in a new environment that, yeah, maybe I'm not great at the start, but I know that I'm good in a similar environment in a different setting. Let's now bring it here and try get better in this environment. That transfer of practice, almost just like a sport. No,
for sure. And I think life becomes way more easier when you start developing a little bit of confidence, because, and you know what, the more I think about it, the more I resonate with what you said before, which is the idea of that belief that everything will just be fine. And I think that's something I've started to notice within myself, now as I'm doing my masters and whatnot. I'm stressing less and less about the little things that may have really kept me up at night maybe a few years ago. So like specific deadlines and assignments and so forth. And I think it's such an easier way of living, right? Like, I'm not ruminating on BS. I'm way more conscious of the things I'm thinking about. And it's a version of myself that I appreciate way more than when I was this little neurotic boy stressing about a bloody 3,000 word essay, right? Like, at this point, yeah, I'm still concerned, but my mental health isn't taking such a cost, right? I'm way more confident and I feel so much better for myself. And, for me, it's a very sexy quality, not for others people to see, but for myself, because I love that. If I was to paint a version of myself that I'm truly proud of, it's that. It's someone who doesn't need to worry about crap. It's someone who worries about the things that matters to him, but at the end of the day has that belief that all will be okay in the process. And I spoke about this concept with a couple of my friends when we were on the last day in Vietnam. We were in Ninh Bình, and whoever's been to Ninh Bình has probably been on those little boats through the caves. I know you went on one of them.
Yep.
It's probably relaxing there, isn't it?
Therapeutic. It's beautiful.
And there's nothing better, I reckon, on a holiday than that last day where you're about to go home, you're about to return back into civilian life, as I like to call it. And you just do a little bit of reflection. You talk about the deeper level stuff in life. And I think on this boat, we kind of got into that mood. It was very calm. It's very quiet. You're by a body of water. And, we were talking about this whole idea of confidence, and we were talking about the fact that, in life, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. And I was speaking with one of my mates who, I'm not going to obviously name or shame him because there's nothing to shame him, to be honest. I'm truly proud of him. And he's done a lot of cool things in the last 2 years. If he's listening to this, he's ran 2 half marathons, or 2 full marathons, actually. He's changed. He's been killing it in the gym, career-wise. He's killing it. That's all I want to say. But I was telling him, and I said something that I really am impressed with him about is that he hasn't become arrogant through the process. He's become way more confident, but he hasn't become arrogant. And I said to him, just be careful. When people really start ticking off goals, it's easy to become seduced by your own accomplishments and you become arrogant as a consequence. And he was fully aware of that. He said, no, I want to, obviously remain confident. But he asked me, do you feel like I'm becoming arrogant? I said, no, you're not. You're definitely not. And the fact that you're asking me that question is a good representation of the fact that you're probably just confident rather than arrogant. And it got me thinking about the fact that a lot of young males, especially those who may have been bullied when they were younger, and then they hit the gym and they have this insane body transformation. They can either go in 2 paths. They either become confident or they become the arrogant nightclub bouncer that kicks 19-year-old boys away. And I thought about it and I said, it's very easy to go down that arrogance path because you want to go on that revenge arc. And I was thinking more and more about it. It's like they don't understand that arrogance. You can strip away the arrogance. You can become confident and arrogant and get rid of the arrogance. But at the end of the day, a lot of people don't know that.
Wow. Beautiful. That's, I think that was beautifully spoken.
You mean it?
Sorry?
You mean it? You reckon it was that beautiful?
Absolutely. I think the way you spoke about our friend there and the way you spoke about, the ability to strip away arrogance and the ability to, just go in on confidence and recognize your confidence and be proud of yourself is a beautiful thing, and it's hard to do, especially as young males wanting to make it big in the world, because as a male, we are driven by fulfillment in a way, and we are driven by wanting to be a better version of ourselves. And it comes down to that evolutionary psychology of being that male and being the hunter and trying to get as many possessions as you can. It comes back down to that evolutionary psychology. So I think it's innate in us as males to be that way inclined. But I think it's definitely when you can come across males that can master that fine line between stripping away that arrogance and between, just really honing in on that confidence and being a better person themselves. And as a result, gathering other people around them and putting them on their backs and saying, you know what, let's do this collectively and let's make each other better. I
agree. And I think for some, they might ask I want to become confident because that's an honorable quality to have, but they don't want to become arrogant. So the key things I would tell someone if they asked me, how do I just stay confident without becoming arrogant? I'd say, you got to keep reminding of yourself that whilst you're very good in a lot of departments, you have a lot of weaknesses in other departments, as we all do, because we're all humans. It's like that reality check almost. Yeah. Just like what the Carlton Football Club's currently experiencing. You're not that good. You're not second best team in the competition. Bring yourself back down to earth. I don't know. You guys are pretty good. 5-day breaks aren't treating you too well, though. But at the same time, it's maintaining humility as well. And I think if the Carlton Football Club can do that, they'll go a long way in September. And I think another thing that arrogant people don't do that confident people do is seeing the lighter things in life. They don't take everything so seriously. They don't have to maintain this hard exterior shell at every point in time. Yeah, exactly. That's a nice point about that hard exterior shell, because that's what we want to
we want to be seen as strong. We want to be seen as a guy. We want to be seen as strong, that, nothing can break us, nothing can bring us down. And I think confident men are men that have the mindset that, you know what, you're not going to be strong in everything in life, and accept that. And, in the areas that you don't feel as strong in, learn to master that, learn to tap into that a little bit more, and better yourself in those areas, and don't just paint this facade and masquerade yourself as strong in a certain area when you're not. Because like we've spoken about before, being vulnerable and admitting to weaknesses is a strength in itself. And you will only come across that in confident men. You won't see an arrogant man acting that way.
And that's why people respect confidence and disrespect arrogance. And it's the exact same reason why I think people who are confident will do less, because less is more to them. And I think that's the key pivotal thing. And you know what? If you want to ask yourself, am I a confident person or an arrogant person? See the people around you.
Ask your friends. Honestly, just like you said in your situation here, with our friend, I think the ability to ask your mates around you, do you feel like I'm confident, or do you feel like I'm a bit arrogant and I'm a bit cocky? And if you can go into that and ask that really, vulnerable question about yourself, your mates will probably give you a really honest answer. And, approach that with, as the person asking that question, approach that with the ultimate form of openness, because that's the only way that you'll get better. And once you do get better at that, then it'll manifest and you will be able to be seen in that light amongst other people as well.
I love it. Anything else?
Anything else? I think, in terms of humility, that's a big part of it as well, which, arrogance and humility, it's kind of that opposite end of the spectrum. And I think, humility doesn't need to look like not publicizing your achievements.
I love that.
Yeah. It doesn't need to look like downplaying your achievements, downplaying who you are as a person, because I feel like that's something that, sometimes I've felt like I've been a bit of a person that does that. Like if someone was to give me a compliment, if you were to give me a compliment for something, or whoever was to, maybe give me a compliment, there'd be times where maybe I'll just downplay it and not actually appreciate and take in that compliment and thank you for it, But I think, just because you achieve good things and you do well and people see that, accept that. Be proud of yourself about that. Someone gives you a compliment, say, thanks so much. That is something that, does mean a lot to me, and I have been really working on. So it's great to hear that. That's not an arrogant or ignorant thing for you to say in the slightest. That's an incredible thing and an incredible social skill to have, is acceptance of when you actually are doing good, and accepting that when other people see that in you, you can take it as well. And the same goes for, publicizing your achievements and talking good about yourself in the light of other people, It's a way in which you go about it. I think patronizing other people about it, that's when your arrogance starts to maybe get questioned. But if you do it in a way that is I've been working on this for X amount of time, or I've had a really successful week because X, Y, and Z, and I'm really proud of myself, people will appreciate that, and you won't ever be seen as arrogant for that. People will see that as, here's this person that actually recognizes when shit's going really well for him, and he's not cocky about it. He's not making me feel like less of a person just because he's doing great things. Celebrating
your wins isn't synonymous with being arrogant. It's synonymous with being confident. Otherwise, LinkedIn would be one big arrogant party.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On that note, mate, I think we've really, really, really well developed, our perspectives on confidence and arrogance here. Anything more to add?
No, just some excellent analysis here, I reckon.
Yeah, love it.
I've rated it. It's been a good discussion. I mean, for anyone listening to this and they're grappling with this, feel free to shoot us a DM. Our DMs are always open, and, we'll probably be talking a bit more about this topic in future episodes. And
absolutely.
I reckon, look, if this is an episode that resonated with you and it potentially might resonate with some of your friends, do send that episode across. If you've liked it, why not rate us a 5-star on Apple Podcasts and Spotify? In any case, I don't know, man. It's just pretty cold today. I think I'm going to stay indoors.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, guys, keep being confident motherfuckers and spreading your wings, and don't let anyone tell you, you're not great at doing something if you believe you are,
You tell them, Jem.
You tell them. And, as humans, we often get, try to get pegged down a little notch sometimes. And I think, I'm a big advocate for, like actually being proud of yourself. So I think you hit the nail on the head, and we'll leave it at that.
See you guys.
We'll see you next time. Happy Tuesday.
Bye-bye.